You live day in, day out, and then
Yeah.
you face these kind of things. What? I don't want to live my life like this, man.
It's like, oh, finally, I'm in a working world. Okay, time to take on the world, time to take on the responsibilities.
Good things that are being done, you're like, oh, they're just millennials. What do they know?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Millennials Debunked.
Being in training line, we noticed that there are a lot of corporations out there who face this issue of a generation gap between the employees. A lot of corporates now, they want to employ the younger generation, but they fear that, there will be a generation gap between the new employees with the current employees now. So that's why we are making this program, Millennials Debunked. A lot of times millennials feel like they're the most misunderstood generation in the workplace, but they don't have a place to speak out. So this is the purpose of our Millennials Debunk program, where we want to be a neutral platform for the millennials to voice out their opinions, and at the same time for the current workforce and employers to be able to understand further what is all these new young generation thinking about.
My name is Ethan, and I am working in HR. So I've been working for about a year. I have, so that would make me about 23. And it is fantastic to be here. Yeah, I graduated pre-corona, so that was really, really helpful.
Wow.
Oh, hi. I am Ben. I also graduated pre-corona. Ever since graduating, I've worked multiple jobs, as any millennial would do, because they can't make up their mind. Yeah, that's me lah.
Everyone, I'm Jay. I'm 26 this year. I've been working for about 3 years now. I've been starting out as an intern and moving on to a banker, and now finally I'm settled in a PR agency.
Question time. I want to ask, have you guys been labeled as millennial before?
Yeah, I've never been labeled as millennial. It's always a blink. Is this guy a millennial? We're not sure. And then it proceeds to just saying young people because they're not sure.
Usually when I'm called a millennial, they won't say millennial. Yeah, they'll say millennial, they'll say young people. It usually brings a negative connotation to it. We express ourselves too much, we complain too much, we expect too much, and we are not willing to go through the hard work.
Ben has a really nice take to it. For me, for my add-on part is that millennials are those that, like how our parents, they have put in a lot of effort to be where they are right now. And us as millennials who are living off the benefits of their hard work. And right now, we're able to live comfortably. We're able to get almost anything we want without having to have a drop of sweat.
Do you all feel unjust for you guys? Yeah, how does it make you guys feel?
I wouldn't say that I ever thought like, oh, my name is Ethan, I am millennial. When people put the label millennial on me, then only it has a meaning. So for me, I think the generation itself is great. We've got many pros, many cons, many interesting things. It's very, very weird. But when you suddenly put the word millennial, then I'm like, why are you calling me that? That's not really what I want to be. I know my generation is great, but can we not use that word? That's the feeling I get.
I don't feel that it's unjust. I feel it's very fair because if you put yourself in their shoes, we didn't work like, let's say, my superiors or the seniors in the companies I used to work in. We didn't work as hard as them. We got everything handed on a silver platter. We went to university, we graduated, then we expect more. So I guess it's fair, but at the same time, we have to understand both parties because maybe the older generation don't feel the need to, put themselves in the younger person's shoe. Why would this person expect more? Why don't they want to do the hard labor, go out handing flyers, shit like that? But yeah, I feel that it's not unfair for us to be labeled badly, for us to be judged. It happens every generation. I bet our parents or what. So it's like history repeats itself. It's just a phase you have to go through until we finally earn the respect of whoever through our achievements.
For me, I'm also pretty indifferent about it. It's just a form of label that the older generations use on us. And for us, it is what it is. I mean, we're born around the millennial era, so we're termed that way. Even though the perspective might seem negative, but it ain't all too negative because I've heard some pretty good stuff about being millennial as well. How the world is changing towards the millennials' needs, like the technological advancements around us. It's all coming from the millennials' needs, like just want things convenient, fast. Yeah, it's just a word to me lah.
Yeah, to me, I agree with Ethan. That's also my opinion. Generally, I don't see myself very much like a millennial. Maybe also because I'm not really technologically savvy.
Sometimes the label is used to like make every effort seem diminished. Good things that are being done, they're like, oh, they're just millennials. What do they know? They're very focused on this one thing. But then in a few years' time, suddenly, oh my God, global warming is a real thing. Why didn't we listen to the young people earlier? Now it's up to them to solve the problem. So it's like it's a blanket statement way to cover up and diminish efforts. I find that being done, So it's something that I'm like, why do we have to label it that? Like, why do you need to use this against us? At the same time, I try not to take it too seriously because it's not going to last much longer anyway. We have a new generation coming in, and it'll be our turn to decide what to label them.
To add on to that, we can even see how the generation that is younger than us, we can see like our niece, our nephews, they are growing up in the technological world. Even like kids, they can even know how to operate their iPad, phone and everything. All this stuff is like going in a loop, like, if you ask me.
Do you remember the first experience when you started working?
I remember it like it was just yesterday because it wasn't very long ago. So I work in a bigger company, so it's an MNC, covers a few different regions. I am the youngest, and it's very much colder than you'd expect. I think one thing that I did not understand going into work as a young person is that the young people are distributed very weirdly across different industries. Like you may find a lot more in banks, such as Maybank, where they hire hundreds at a go for their management trainee programs. And you might find very, very few in FMCGs or, manufacturing. So it can be quite an isolating environment. The differences are very apparent there, especially when it's built on a system where people are meant to work first and smile during lunch and then resume working. I was quite shocked personally because, the people are nice. There's no question about it. In fact, I have great colleagues. It's just, it is not the kind of nice that you would like to have as a person in this generation. You want to share more, laugh about more things. You have thoughts, you have posts that you see, topics you want to talk about. These don't seem to come up very often in my type of workplace, where the closest to my age in my department is almost 10 years older than me.
10 years older.
Yeah, I'm the nephew there. Yeah.
From the internship standpoint, I do feel a bit wow to me because it's like, oh, finally, I'm in a working world. Okay, time to take on the world, time to take on the responsibilities. It does feel okay there. In the end, I decided to enter a bank. It's the corporate world and things happen. There are stuff that you can't avoid, stuff that you will need to deal head on. And the people around me just feels like, there are good people around that are willing to help you out, but there are also the type of people that would do stuff behind your back. And I've experienced that firsthand. It didn't really feel as good as I initially thought because like in the beginning stage, for me finally I have some form of responsibilities that I can take on. I can take on the world. In other words, growing up 101. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like I've reached a new level, and then like when you reach that level, when things happen, it's like, okay, time to level up better. Oh, and also like after that, I jumped into this PR line. My first impression is that it feels really different from my other two experiences because you know how like people like enjoy working in places like Google, Facebook, those sort of places where the community feels very tight. You're well taken care of. You're just gonna enjoy your time there, no matter how tough it is. You just know that there's this group of people that are willing to stick around with you. For me, it just feels amazing to have an amazing team in this place.
As I've said in the introduction, I've worked multiple jobs. I think a bit too much for my resume. So it doesn't really look very good because people would think like, oh, is he gonna stay long term? He doesn't last more than 2 years, 1 year at most in a company. So I first started in a corporate firm. This was I got recommended in by one of my relatives. I felt what Ethan was feeling at that coldness. Because they were young people, there were other interns as well, but everyone working there, they all had smiles on their faces. You know, they know how to smile where they squint their eyes and then it looks really, really friendly, but you know it's a trained skill. So it feels very every time I smile, it feels very painful, you know, it's very forced. And I was like, sometimes it's just like then there's obviously politics going on. It's not even a big office, you know, it's like one department, there's like 20, 30 people, and then there's already like two, three things happening at the same time. Like this group has something to say about the other group, and then you're all in one office, and then it feels very like, you know, you live day in, day out, 9 hours, 10 hours a day, and then you face these kind of things coming from a very loving and like friendly uni environment. Then you go into something like this, you're like, what? I don't want to live my life like this, man. 20 years down the road, even if I graduate and then I go in, senior manager, drive a nice car, but then I don't have anyone around me that I feel safe around. You know, I feel like, wow, I need to look behind my back. Right? This guy, he sent this email, CC who? What does it mean? What does it mean? You know, like my mom, she works in a corporate environment. She's been working there for like, you know, her whole life. I've seen her go through it. It's not a nice sight to see. So I vowed to myself after trying that one time that I would try to avoid that as much as possible. So ever since then, it was mostly startups, small companies. It's a very enlightening place to be. Although the pay is not as good, the benefits are not as good, but people work as a family because you have no time to, you know, bullshit and backstab each other. Because if you do that, the team doesn't work, team doesn't run, company fails. There are pros and cons. Like obviously, I sometimes envy those friends of mine working in big corporates because MCO pandemic, they don't have to worry about their job security. It's like it's there already. Even if they get fired, they have a good compensation plan. They can still jump to another MNC. Whereas being in a small firm, you worry about the company's well-being because, like, you know, it hits you hard. I work multiple startups, and I can say is that personally I prefer the environment much more. Even though the first startup I worked in closed down, it was really hectic because they expect you to do everything like one person.
Tend to have less manpower, right?
Yup, like way less manpower. And then the boss would say like, hey, you say we need to do this, but then the boss say, hey, can you do? And I'm like, cannot. Then things like OT and all, like, you know, it doesn't exist lah. You ask for OT, like, then the boss will tell you things like, I don't pay you OT now. It's because one day in the future when we make profit, you are going to get that share. You want to earn millions later or you want to earn few thousand now? You know, that kind of feeling. You're like, okay. I work until 9, 10, sometimes 12 o'clock at night. And then like, no OT, man. I also need to take leave. Or you see like, hey, youngster, you know, last time when I was your age, then now the story come out. Or the millennials, like, you don't know how to work hard. Then I'm like, okay.
Because of that corporate experience that you had, right? So you actually made a vow to yourself that you would not want to live that way. Do you all have certain experiences that made you guys vow certain things?
Personally, it's a bit challenging because when I try and look at where I want to be in maybe 10 to 5 years from now, what are the kind of things I want to be doing, I never have a completely concrete plan. It's more of I have an idea of what is the kind of person I want to be like in 10 years and what are the kind of daily experiences I want to be having and how do I get there. I took a gap year almost and I worked in a smaller consulting firm and I loved the environment there. Everybody, yes, they do suffer. They work quite a bit longer for a lesser amount of pay because it was a social enterprise. But the thing is, it's such a warm environment and you feel supported. And you feel like I can go on, there's a nice group of people, we support one another, we are learning, we are progressing, tough times come and go. So that's the kind of feeling that I could get. At the same time, those people there themselves were telling me, you cannot understand the value of this until you have worked in the corporate sphere and understood what that feels like. That was a very weird alternate promise I had to give myself. Because for me, and it was a promise, I had to promise myself that I would get that exposure, I would understand it, as in not just, oh, this is what suffering looks like. It's more like I understand like the dynamic of the company, you know, like what is a big organization like, how do people speak to one another, because even little things like being caring in a big and small organization is different. In a small organization, it's sitting in a pantry working on something, and then someone comes up to you, you look down, what's up? And then you go into the whole grandfather story about your cat. But in a bigger organization, it can just be like, do you need help? Okay. And that's caring, you know? I have told myself that I need to really understand that dynamic because if I'm going to work with people and my ultimate goal is either being involved in learning and development or education sphere in a few years from now, I want to understand the people. So I need to give this the time and the space. If I don't do that, then I will not be able to appreciate the full dynamic. So it's a tough one. It's a really tough one on certain days. I really long for that closeness very often. Um, Remarkably, a lot of differences exist. One is that we live on different social media platforms. For example, there was a lot of very difficult, painful things being shared recently, right? And I
Okay.
felt like my bosses will never understand the amount of weight that's being put on us mentally through social media. So there's no understanding of the different struggles because of different dynamics. And I must accept that for now because I need to experience this first. It's a difficult promise, but it's one that I feel I need to take. So yeah, that's something I've needed to do.
What do you mean that the different social media platforms will not enable your bosses to understand your mental pressures?
Okay. So this is an interesting thing. So recently they had the whole Black Lives Matter movement, the local refugee issues. I mean, most recently it's Yemen, but the two of those are local, right? So the thing is, it was not only so I am Indian, so it resonates with me because I worry about the discrimination here. I know like job progression is objectively impacted here by that. I don't like to think about it, but it's true. And all these things come up a lot, like very heavily on all forms of our generation's social media. If you think about it, how many posts have you seen from your uncles and aunties' generation on Facebook? In fact, almost none regarding Black Lives Matter
Yeah.
and the local discrimination, which means that for a good 1 week plus, I felt internally tormented. And I knew that if I had just like messaged someone and told them, hey, I don't know if you heard of this, but it's really freaking me out. I'm having an internal crisis. I'm not sure what to do. And I'm aware that my boss, although he's a really cool guy, would look at me a little bit confused and be like, what are you talking about? I don't see anything. So that's a real scary concern. Like I'm worried about that. And the fact that in the some corporate spheres, there's not enough young people for this to be real.
For mine, it's just something really simple. Because of how my previous job in the bank, it's actually mentally tiring for me. Because number one, the bank that I worked on is not. There's no local market for it, so we're actually supporting overseas region. By supporting overseas means we gotta work off hours, and my working hours was 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. Yes, to those that have just graduated and especially uni students that love gaming like me, it feels amazing because it's like, yes, it's against the traffic, I get to sleep late, this is the life, and they pay you good money for it some more. So it feels good. But over time, it does take the toll on you because 3 p.m. to 12 a.m., actually, you won't be able to have any social life. Your social life is basically your colleagues and your family, your friends, and even the girlfriend is also like, you slowly be disconnected. And the only time that you get to appreciate your time with everyone is only during the weekend. That's an issue at one hand. Secondly, the job scope that I have, it's just a very simple job scope to the point that people around me can even say that even high school students can even do so, which I totally agree because it's a super back-end job whereby we just do processing and that's it.
Mostly administrative stuff, is it?
Yes, it's administrative task. So all you gotta know what to do is to fill up some forms, having good Excel skills, know how to send email, and basically you can go ahead and do your work. So that's practically your job. Yeah, so it's like there's not much of learning and growth that I can absorb because for me, one thing that I step out to work in a bank is that I get to learn more about bank stuff like financials, investments, and all these kind of processes around me, but it's merely back-end stuff. And thirdly, which is the sort of relationship that I get with my colleagues. I mean, we're just in a team of 20, and for a small team like that in a big company, having politic within 20 of us is kind of dumb. And 20 of us are supporting one function of the bank, but yet it can crumble internally because of the politics. It just feels dumb to me. I mean, like, we're serving the same clients. Each of us are performing different roles and tasks. Why can't we just get along and just do our part in it lah? You know, what seems to be the problem? Why do you need to put so much effort in all those backstabbing and talk bad about you kind of nonsense? It just doesn't make sense to me. So that was the last straw to me. Hard to say this, but I was also one of the black sheep of the whole thing. So I'm like, you know what, I'm done. And I've kind of made a vow to myself that it doesn't matter how much money you make, but the most important is whether you enjoy your time there, either through the stuff that you're doing or through the relationship that you have built with your colleagues. And yeah, that's all from my side. Like, you know, these are the things that I want to look for in a company.
Because I actually agree with Ben that time. Like in my experience, like there was once I also was working in a lot of startups, and especially like, you know, in startups like Ben, what you say, right? You have to do everything on leg kick, right? And then there were times where I stay in office until like 11 something. And sometimes with my boss around, we do filing until like 2 a.m. There was once we yeah. So then I remember I had to sit the train back. You know, every day I had to sit train 1 hour. Right? It was like already 10 o'clock. I lock up the place and I sit the train. It's another 1 hour to reach home. I was holding the bar and I was crying, literally just letting down.
I relate.
And it was then that I was like, I vow to myself. It was something like, I promised myself I'm not going to do this to myself anymore. Not to say like I don't want to go to any startup, but I want to be able to stand up for myself and say like, no, I need to go back. I need to have time for my family as well.
So if you have advice for the next generation, to the upcoming youngsters, our beloved upcoming youngsters, what advice will you give them to the people who is watching this?
Like for the youngsters, just don't be afraid to try out new things first. Don't be afraid to step it out into the corporate world or wherever you want to start out life, you know, like just step out there and gain as much experience as you can, because experience and knowledge is something that is very priceless and something that you can hold dear to. You would know how to either grow out of it or in the end, like for my case, know what you want and what you don't want in a company. Know about yourself better. And honestly, it just takes practice lah. Once you reach there, and in the end, you'll be able to look back at those experiences and just be glad that those things were in place. Otherwise, you wouldn't be where you are right now.
I really agree with what Jay said. For me, I don't have a quote that I can give from myself right now, but I remember a quote that I read probably a year back. Hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life. So I made a lot of bad choices. There have been a lot of difficult choices that I've made. But sometimes, no matter how many bad choices you make, you shouldn't give up on deciding things in your life. Like, you know, like when you keep making bad choices, sometimes you lose faith in your own you know, you don't trust your gut anymore. You start thinking like, do I know better? Am I doing the right thing, you know? But I think we should always make choices constantly. I mean, not to always jump jobs and all, but it's important to still be in control of how you want to direct your life. And like Jay said, like every experience will make you a better person. Like Grace, you said something about crying on the way back from the train. I felt the same when I was working in the startup. I was alone, then I was like driving the car in the middle of the jam at 2 p.m. Then like I was stuck there, then I was, you know, I wasn't earning a bad pay, but I had no colleagues, you know, and because my team, everyone left in the team, I was the only few left, and then we were like saving this dying company, and then I was like, what the am I doing here? But then I'll get nagging from my parents at home saying like, just go join a good company lah. Why you so stubborn now? Why you going and join all this stuff small firm, you know? Now I feel I don't regret it one bit because no matter how much bad stuff you go through as a millennial or as a whatever lah, even you're old, you're young, eventually you learn from it as character development. No pain, no gain. Yeah.
I think it's very beautiful, Ben. If I just wanted to add, I think there's one line someone told me when I was really struggling. In all times when everything is horrible and it looks like there's nothing to gain, you can always gain resilience. But what I was thinking about is also a little bit of what I felt I was really challenged with when I started working. I think for me, one piece of advice I'd like to give is there's always going to be a lot of advice on how to be cynical, on how to be rational, on how to be logical about your ideal workplace and how to make things work for you, which decision is better than the next. But I feel like many times we use that as a reason not to be optimistic, because we're always waiting for something to go wrong, for something to be bad, and then to tell ourselves that's how working life is. It's very tricky, because while we may tell ourselves that sometimes, I believe a lot of us are also a little bit afraid to be optimistic. I know I'm not unrealistically optimistic. I'm a bit more jovial. I enjoy being around people. But I felt that I had this pressure to taper it down, to be more like, this is work. You can't really look like you're enjoying what you do. Yeah, so that whole element of actually being happy and being optimistic about what could come next, I think we force ourselves to keep it down a lot in favor of looking more rational and looking more logical. I think what I'm trying to say is perhaps don't be afraid of enjoying yourself because it looks like you're not really doing anything. I think that's one scary thing, because when we're about to enjoy ourselves, usually we start to reflect, maybe I'm enjoying myself, but this isn't a big company. Or maybe I'm enjoying myself, but I'm not making much money. Or maybe so there's that analysis paralysis help. But it's not just that, it's the compulsion to do it. It's like if I don't do it, that means I'm not in the working world. I am being too happy. I'm being unrealistically optimistic. But you got to enjoy yourself too. It doesn't mean that once you start working, then you have to be cold, because that's how working world is. So I think allowing yourself to be optimistic and enjoying things without crippling yourself with all the possible concerns. It's getting harder to do, but I think it's something we're afraid of doing. I was certainly afraid of doing it at first. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to say good morning to the guy because I want to say good morning. You're not going to stop me from making a good morning. Yeah. So that's what I feel. It's having that courage to enjoy yourself.
I feel like because everyone's complaining about something, you feel like you must have something to complain about. So like as if when you don't, right, it's like, are you really working? Are you really growing up? But I think like having that kind of positive attitude makes you so much more cheerful. And I think the people around you would feel that you are a very nice person to work with. They even enjoy working with you, I think having that kind of attitude, we need more people that will bring this kind of positive vibe into the working industry.
With that said, thank you, Ethan, thank you, Ben, thank you, Jay, and especially thank you, Grace, for willing to share your insights and experience on the talk show. I'll see you on the next show. Bye-bye.
Bye.